how much of a psycho crazy bitch I can be.
A harsh book rater tells you which BookTok books are worth it. Nope. I was promised tears. All I got was boredom. Yes. A little slow at times, but enjoyed the story. Maybe. Also slow but good angst. Not a BookTok book, but sulfur monoxide worth it. Great, yeah.
How many pages can I read in an hour? Extremely slow reader edition. Okay, so I started reading on page 192. And I set my alarm for 1 hour. By the time I was about halfway through, I was on page 215. And I ended on page 234 for a total of 42 pages read.
If you have ever wanted to start reading classics yet haven't because you felt intimidated by their size or whatever, here are some very easy to read starter classics that I would recommend to anyone. The first book is The Haunting of Hill House, a 182-page psychological novel about a doctor who goes to a house to try and figure out if it is actually haunted, and he brings along a group of test subjects. Next up is Madame Bovary, which is a little bit longer at 361 pages and is about a woman who marries a French doctor, and they have very opposite personalities, as the woman is very into the wealthy upper-class lifestyle, meanwhile the doctor is very clearly against it. Next up is The Death of Ivan Ilyich. It is only 134 pages, so pretty short. I will not lie, it is kind of an uncomfortable read. It is about mortality and just the reality that you all will die at some point. But if you are up for having a little bit of a crisis, 10 out of 10 would recommend. Up we have The Complete Sherlock Holmes Volume 1 and Volume 2. This is a obviously 2-volume collection of all newspaper and short stories. They do look a little long. They are both a little over 500 pages. However, these stories are short, so if you're the sort of person who gets gratification from finishing chapters, short chapters, moving through a book quickly, these books will give it to you 100%. Next up is probably one of the easiest classics I have ever read, yet also one of the most thought-provoking ones. It is a philosophical, kind of psychological classic about a guy who quite literally sells his soul so that he never has to grow up. Such a good read, such an easy read, would definitely recommend. And finally is any Jane Austen novel. These are basically all romances that take place in the late 1700s, early 1800s, among the mostly upper class. They're pretty easy reads and almost always have a pretty happy ending from what I've read so far.
Aujourd'hui, on s'attaque à ce que je pense être ma trend préférée sur BookTok. On va parler de mes book girlfriend et non boyfriend, parce qu'on n'aime pas les hommes, préférés. Déjà, la reine des reines, Margot, de la face cachée de Margot de John Green. Je suis désolée, on n'en parle pas assez, cette meuf est masterclass. Ok, elle nous a fait chier tout le livre parce qu'elle a disparu. Et alors, en fait, elle vit sa vie, elle fait sa révolution. C'est mon idole, elle a raison. Elle se venge et elle a raison, c'est ma reine. Bon, j'essaye de dompter mes cheveux comme je peux, mais ça ne marche pas. Ensuite, ma chouchoute. Honnêtement, ma chouchoute, Sloane, de Too Late, Colin Hoover. Enfin, parce que, ok, liste des adjectifs qui la décrivent. Bienveillante, drôle, hyper gentille, hyper mature, hyper intelligente. Je veux dire, madame, tu as tout pour toi, tu es juste tombée dans les mains d'Asa. Mais elle mérite tellement une bonne fin et elle l'a eu. Elle mérite franchement tout ce qu'elle a vécu et tout ce qu'elle a survécu surtout. Elle mérite. Ensuite, en tant que vraie fan de Morgane Moncomble, je ne pouvais pas passer à côté de Rose. Honnêtement, la reine de ce monde. Madame, est-ce qu'on est aussi badass? Bon, elle a ses petits points négatifs. On peut pas nier, voilà. Je vous épargne le plot twist, mais on a tous bien hurlé. Mais enfin, madame, est-ce qu'on sait autant ce qu'on veut? Est-ce qu'on est aussi touchante à la fois? Madame, enfin, elle me rend ouf. Et ensuite, bon, je vais peut-être en décevoir un peu. Kenna. Je suis désolée, on n'en parle pas assez. Je comprends qu'il y en a qui l'aiment pas. Mais pour moi, vous avez devant vous sûrement la protagoniste la plus intéressante de cette série de livres. On est sur quelqu'un d'intéressant, de drôle, de sûrement très profond. Mais enfin, J'ai tellement hâte de lire le livre sur elle, je vous jure, je sais qu'il y a tellement plus à creuser. Elle est tellement intéressante, elle est tellement drôle, elle est tellement investie avec ses copains et ses copines, mais madame, c'est la perfection cette femme, c'est mon idole. Je les aime toutes, franchement je les aime toutes. Abat le patriarcat, vive les femmes.
Far this year, I have read 35 books, so here are the ones that I rated 5-star. I do not give out 5 stars very easily. A 5-star read for me is a book that when I read it, I would not change a single thing about it. And feel free to follow me on Instagram and Goodreads. That's where I post what I'm currently reading in real time if you want to keep up with me over there. My first 5-star read of the year was Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. I talk about this book all the time. I recommend it to literally anybody who needs a really good romance in their life. I was just editing this and I needed to come back and like talk about this book more just because I didn't really give a lot of context, but this book is so different than any romance you're going to read. It's a very real story. It makes you feel connected to the characters and that they could realistically exist in real life. I feel like most romance books are pretty similar, but this one, it made me laugh, it made me cry. I fell in love with Brianna and Jacob's love. It was so good. Oh my gosh, read it. Also gave 5 stars to Dark Matter and Recursion, both by Blake Crouch. He is an amazing sci-fi author. If you're looking to dip your toe in a different genre, if you've never read sci-fi before, I highly recommend checking these out. They're books that are going to make you mind blown, but also make you think. And we have Same Time Next Summer by Annabelle Monaghan. I loved every single part of this book. If you liked Every Summer After, definitely check this out. Very similar vibes, childhood romance moving into adulthood, and also a really quick read, a great beachy read. It's like under 300 pages. I flew through this. I actually had to pace myself to slow down because I was obsessed with every single part of this book. House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. This is an amazing feel-good fantasy book. This will make you feel all the feels. It is so good. Another book that if you're looking to kind of dip your toe into fantasy, I would definitely start with this. It's a little bit fantasy, but like also incorporates like real life. Just an overall really great, heartwarming story. And then on the polar opposite side of the spectrum, we have Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. Definitely check trigger warnings before you read this. It is very dark. But up until I read this, I haven't read a thriller that made me feel the way that this book made me feel. I would definitely give it a try, but like I said, check trigger warnings, but it is so freaking good. Next up, we have 2 Ellen Hildebrand books. You guys know this is an Ellen Hildebrand fan page. If you need a good B2 read, definitely check out her books. The 5-Star Weekend is her newest release. I loved it. I loved every single thing about it. Her books are full of so much description that you feel like you're sitting in the room and that you're in the mind of every character. And 28 Summers by her was also a 5-star for me. Again, another great summer read. I read this on the beach and just absolutely loved the vibes. The Push was the first book that I read this year, and before you read it, especially if you're a mom, I would definitely check the trigger warnings because there are some dark things that happen in this book, but it's a really good thriller and it's only about 300 pages, so you can pretty much fly through this. Great twists that happen throughout it, and the ending will literally have you like... Books that I will accept 0 criticism on. I am not someone who gives out 5 stars very easily. These books are books that I would not change a single thing, that I am just fully obsessed with and always will be. Definitely let me know some of your 5-star reads because I'm always looking to add things to my TBR list, and if you guys love them, there's a pretty good chance I'm gonna love it too. First up is my favorite book of all time, the book that made me fall in love with reading again as an adult. I fell in love with reading as a kid from reading the Harry Potter series and the City of Ember series, and The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna made me fall in love with reading all over again. I love this book so much that I even have a quote of it tattooed on the back of my arm. The last 3 lines of the book are "Wounds heal, love lasts, we remain." My tattoo says "love lasts," but I just love everything about this book. It's a World War II historical fiction. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend. Next up is Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. This was my first 5-star read of this year, 2023, and for good reason. It's so different than any romance novel you will ever read. I just instantly fell in love with this book, all of the characters. It is everything. The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. This book at first, I gave it a 4.5 out of 5, but the longer I sit and think about it, this is a 5-star read. It's a little bit of a fantasy vibe. This book will leave your heart feeling so warm and full at the end. I cannot recommend it enough. Book that I read on my Kindle last year, and I just ordered the physical copy just so that I can have it on my bookshelf and lend it to friends, but The Wish by Nicholas Sparks. This book does have a slower start. I remember posting it on my Instagram story last year when I read it, and I was like 30% of the way in, and I was like, hello, has anyone else out there read this book? Because I don't know if it's worth it to push through it, and I promise you it's worth it. There is a twist in there that blew my mind. My boyfriend's grandmother actually just read this book, and we were talking about it, and we were both so obsessed. It's such a great book. Same Time Next Summer by Annabelle Monaghan. She also wrote Nora Goes Off Script, which is another book that got a 4.5 from me, but this was a solid 5. It's a really great summer beachy romance. It flips back and forth between then and now. It's really great. It just made my heart so happy. I've seen some mixed reviews about it, but I personally loved it. These are all Ellen Hildebrand Hildebrand books. And if you know me, if you've been here for any amount of time, then you know my love for Ellen Hildebrand. Her books are the best. I'm trying to make my way through all of her books so that I can rank them all for you guys. But the most recent book that I read was 28 Summers. I loved this book so freaking much. If you need a good summer read, definitely grab this. Golden Girl is another book that will rip your heart out, but is so amazing. The way everything ties together in this book is just perfection. Two most recent releases are perfect if you're going on a beach vacation, you need a beach read. We'll start with The Hotel Nantucket. This is about a hotel staff trying to get a perfect 5-key review from an anonymous hotel reviewer. You're gonna meet a lot of characters in this book, but all of them are so perfect in their own individual ways. And again, the way she ties this up at the end is perfection. Last but definitely not least, we have The 5-Star Weekend. This is about a woman who loses her husband and puts together this 5-star girls weekend. The amount of description that went into this book, you literally feel like you're sitting in the room with these characters, that you're eating the same food, that you're thinking their thoughts, that you're in their conversations. It's so good.
So I just found out apparently I'm colorblind. Don't know how long that's been going on for, but man, I tell you what, shocked me too. Came right out of the purple. I've got a tiny cock, which is accurate. His name is Winston. He's my favorite. And though I have a tiny cock, at least I've got a huge penis.